Hey guys, Staff here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. So today we have got the big clan boss reveal, the MythWatchers, that we've been building on stream and I've been working on for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Now Deadwood has done a variant with Elva in his teams, but this one is slightly different as we've been able to optimize it and change it around. And we also have a lot of flexibility. So this is more of a framework than it is just a specific individual 5-man roster. You can do a lot with different champions in these different teams. And we're going to talk about the different variants at the end of the video, but we are calling this the MythWatchers. It is another Demitha based team, but we are using the new faction champions to really maximize the value. So we have Ruella is going to be in this team. Ruella is a new champion. We basically get 2 triple hitters, so you run Giant Slayer on her. She does decrease defense and weaken on 1 ability. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, but it's pretty much always guaranteed that you're going to land these different debuffs because each hit has a 50% booked up to 75% chance to place all of the debuffs. We then have a timed offensive ability here, fills the turn meters of all allies by 20% and gives you an increased crit rate buff on a 3-turn cooldown. So 3 turns is important because we want to run 3-1, which means that we want to run this once every single turn. So that's an important factor to consider here. And then we just have a standard triple hitter. If you were using it in different places of the game, you could. But for Clan Boss, this is just a triple hit A1. And we're also using Elva Autumnborn. Elva is the only champion in the game that cleanses, places increase speed, and also places block debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown on a single ability. Again, 3-turn cooldown is important because we want to run on 3-1 ratio. She's also a bit of a healer here. You can do some clever things with Turvold. We're going to explain some of the mechanics of the way her passive in A1 works, but she also has an aura of speed, which means we can basically reduce our speeds for our teams. So she is a really strong champion. She basically makes this affinity friendly much easier, much more flexible. And of course, we are running with Demitha. Demitha is, by now everyone knows, if you've seen a team, block damage on a 3-turn cooldown. You've seen a trend here, but she also is special because she increases the duration of all buffs by 1 turn, which is very important here. A lot of people have said to me, Hellhades is really good and all this. He is good, but he doesn't offer the same level of flexibility that Demitha does because of this 3-turn extension. It does mean she only attacks once on the A1, but she still pumps out a surprising amount of damage, and it is a bit of an obnoxious amount of books here, I have to say. She does require a lot of books. If you get lucky and you just book this too, and you book this, great. Otherwise, you're just booking a lot. Of course, everyone should be expecting by now, if you're used to Clan Boss, any reliable 2-1, 3-1 team is going to run Seeker. He's just so dominant because of this A2. It is a 3-turn cooldown when you book. Again, 3 turns. He will get an extra turn when he fills the allies by 30%, but he also gives you increased attack. So generally, attack-based champions will output more damage than defense-based. So you generally want this increased attack in your Clan Boss unkillable teams. and the fill by 30% really creates the sort of 2-1 and 3-1 teams that we build in Clan Boss. The fact he gets an extra turn effectively makes this a 2-1 ability, in the sense it's a 2-turn cooldown. He then hits twice on the A1 for a bit of damage, but doesn't do anything else other than that. He's actually pretty solid for a provoker in Hydra. But that is why Seeker is so dominant, is because it is effectively a 2-turn, 30% fill with increased attack. There are not many champions that can do that, if any, in the game. So that's the framework. That is the team framework. And then you've got flexibility in terms of who you run in the DPS. There is very different options. We're going to look at all that. But first, let's have a look at the Clan Boss team in action in the Deadwood Jedi calculator. If you haven't used the Deadwood Jedi calculator by now, go check it out. It is a pretty powerful tool. You can put any of the champions in the game in that calculator, with a few exceptions I think that we're still working on. Trying to fix up some of the sort of niche, special, passive champions. You can put them in the calculator. You can mess around with different speed tunes. You can try and find your own speed tunes, or check your team against this speed tune and figure out what you want to do. You need to have a free account to sign up, and if you want to save those links, you can sign up for a premium membership with Deadwood. Bit of a promotion out for Deadwood here. Not that it's meant to be, but it's such a great tool that he deserves your support. I personally subscribe to it. I think it's a great tool. I have a lot of fun with that calculator. So this is a full 3-1 Clan Boss team. It is a fully 3-1 team. Every single champion, with the exception of Seeker, but effectively he's going 3-1 because of his extra turn, is taking 3 turns to the 1 single Clan Boss turn, which means we can really pump some crazy damage. And the speeds that you require to enable this 3-1 are some of the lowest 3-1 speeds that I've ever managed to create in a Clan Boss team. I have one champion that can essentially go at 3-1 with less than 200 speed. It is absolutely bonkers. Now, of course, some of the champions in this team require relatively high speeds. I'm not saying that this is an accessibly mid-game team at all. It is a late to end game accessible team. It is a pretty decent average speeds. It's not the end of the world because we can utilize Elva's speed. So you can see here how it's set up. It turns in by around about turn 5 on Ultra Nightmare. There's some different quirks and different setups on Nightmare. I'll include in the description of this video all the different variations in terms of the setup that you need to make this work. There is a tune that makes this work with Ninja. I'm working on a Jintoro tune at the moment because of his passive. It's a little bit more awkward. But the value of this team, and this is where it's slightly different in terms of Deadwood's team, is we can maximize the increased crit rate across every single turn, which means we can run all of our champions at 70% crit rate. So even though we require slightly higher speeds, we can offset that against the lower crit rate requirements that we have in this team. Now, I'm using Shemnath here, my DPS. That is the main champion that I found to be the best here, although there is a single champion in this team that can run Relentless. We'll cover that at the end of the video. But in this team, we can't run Relentless, but you can choose to run Cycle of Magic if you want. So you can see here, Shemnath will open the turn. Because we've got Elva Autumnborn, we have no affinity issues. I can change this to Spirit. We're not in any sort of danger whatsoever because Elva's either going to cleanse it or she's going to block it. The only champion we kind of don't want to be able to take the stun is Seeker, so you can get around that by making sure that Seeker has Steadfast, but Elva Autumnborn doesn't, because Elva will always have the block debuffs up, and Elva can take the stun. So that's the only important thing to note here. We'll check that when we go through the masteries. But we basically run through this. Shemnath will take the first turn here. Ruella's going to put up her A2 buff here. That's going to put all the debuffs up, so we don't need to bring any other debuffs. Our 5th slot, Shemnath slot, can be anyone you want in the game. You don't require any debuffs. You don't require anything else. It can be any champion, so long as they don't have any quirky turn meter mechanics. Otherwise, it might need some tune adjustments. It can be anyone. It can be the rare champion you found with a 6-star soul that's got a perfect phantom touch. Or it could be the really crazy Turvold builds. Or it could be a ninja. Or it could be anyone you want. You don't even need to build them with accuracy. Why? Because Ruella is doing all of the work in this tune. She's providing all of our debuffs. Elva is going to attack with her A1 twice. Now, her damage is not crazy, but in this team, we're going to run her in a toxic build, and you'll see why Shemnath really adds a lot of value to this team. Seeker is providing the increased attack. There is one turn in which you don't have increased attack that you need to be mindful of on your DPS here. So the DPS slot is most efficient with someone who can either self-increase their buffs, someone like a Shemnath, or can provide themselves with an increased attack on a specific ratio. Someone like Skrunk, Saito, Turvold is a champion that can work in this tune. There's lots of different options, but champions that can give themselves an extra increased attack to basically cover the one particular turn you don't have increased attack. But the champions do have increased crit rate on every single turn, so we can run lower. So if we're looking at the speeds here, we are running a 20% aura because we have the inspiring aura, the blessing, the commanding presence on Demitha, so we're getting about 7.5%. So we get about 20.45. You can type this in here on the calculator. We're running at a 294 Elva, and we're running 208 Shemnath. So our DPS is running 3-1 at 208. Seeker is currently running at 109, and then Ruella is running at 253. Demitha is at 327. There is some scope and movement around in these tunes, but if you are adjusting them, make sure you double check it in the calculator. These are the speeds that I'm currently running at. The two things we need to make sure we always do is we prioritize the Demitha A2, and we're also prioritizing the Ruella A3 to make sure that the 3 turn skills are the ones that they use by default. So the speeds in terms of accessibility, our DPS champions are relatively accessible. We're talking 208, 189, and 253. They are around about what you would normally have in a sort of high-end Demitha team these days. The Elva at 294 is quite high, but it's much easier to reach that number than it is with an Ares, because Ares has a 94 base speed, whereas Elva has 110 base speed. So it basically means you can scale the speed much easier. Demitha has a pretty decent base speed, but the good thing about both Demitha here and Elva is they're not doing tremendous amounts of damage. You're not requiring 100% crit rate, so you can build a lot less stats into their build to be able to achieve these speed numbers. Now, my build that I've got here that I'm going to be showing you is quite good builds. They're quite strong builds, but they're not perfect builds. There's a lot of growth in the team. So that is the Clan Boss speed tune. I'll put links in the description of this video for all the different variants. It does work on Ultra Nightmare and Brutal, although the setups are slightly different, so check those out. The question you might be asking by now is, why are we using Shemnath? So Shemnath's a champion that's been in the game, I think, for around about 6 months. And I picked him up around about 3 months ago, and I kind of sat there and I was like, I can't do anything with him. The damage in arena now, this AoE is not strong enough to really do much in sort of high-end arena over someone like Candrathon or Baron. So he kind of just like sat there for a while. But we were on stream, we were testing different things, and we came to a realization that Shemnath does something that not many champions do. So let's just go over his kit. He has an A1 decreased defense, which is nice, but we don't need it for this team because we have Ruella. But if you wanted to find a variant here, if you want to mess with this tune and you didn't want Ruella, then you've already got one of your primary debuffs. It's a double hit A1, which means we can look to run Giant Slayer, because the A2 is where all of this magic kind of works. So she transfers all debuffs from this champion to a target enemy, then attacks that enemy 3 times. Now, the transfer is not that important, but what happens? The first hit increases the duration of all debuffs on the target for 1 turn. So if Ruella is running weak affinity, she only needs to land her debuffs once, and then Shemnath, because she is running on a 3-1 ratio, she's going to use this ability on a 3-turn cooldown. Every single turn we're extending the debuffs by 1 turn. The boss should never lose the debuffs once they're on, so you get some affinity-friendly protection. Not only that, we're able to run a single toxic set. Normally in these teams, when you're not running a poison champion, you can run double toxic to try and improve your damage output. In my old teams, I used to run Seeker and Ruella, or Seeker and Ares in double toxic. I don't even need to do that now. I can simply just run Elva in a single toxic set as my lowest damage output champion here, and be able to extend those debuffs. You'll see in the examples when we run the video how easy it is to keep debuffs on the boss with Shemnath. Now, the other thing that this ability does is it decreases the duration of all buffs on the target. So if it's got an increased attack, we can get rid of that and various different things, which is important for his A3. And the third thing, it increases the duration of all buffs on this champion by 1 turn after attacking. But the important thing to note about this ability is the buff extension happens before the buffs expire. So we are able to extend that increased attack that we normally wouldn't have on the middle wave before it falls off, meaning we get that extra turn of that increased attack. We get extra turns of different various buffs. You can pretty much run this and always have buffs up on Shemnath. It's really great. And the damage output is very solid. Finally, we have an A3, which is worth enabling still. The first hit is going to remove any buff. The second hit is going to ignore 20% of the target's defense when there are no active buffs. Again, it's another 3-turn cooldown. We prioritize the A2 because we want to make sure the A2 falls on the turn where we lose the increased attack to make sure that that is always extended. But what makes it even more crazy here is Shemnath's passive. She increases her critical damage value by 5% for each debuff that we have on the enemy. Now, this isn't multiplicative like Ninja's passive, it is additive, so we can only get an extra 100%. It adds on top of our stat, it doesn't multiply our stat, which is a shame, but I can understand why, because it would be incredibly powerful. This basically means because we are running in a setting where we can ensure that the boss always has 10 debuffs up because the toxic set is running, our Shemnath is going to gain 100% crit damage throughout the entirety of the fight running 3-1. So let's take a look at some builds. Now, I haven't done an awful lot of artifact ascending yet. That is on my list of things to do, but I've started getting a few of them here. We didn't get a great roll. We're starting to get a few different things here. I still need to farm a lot more accessories. It's a new faction, like everyone else is probably having the same problem, so these builds will change over time. There's a lot more potential that I have in my Ruella build here. But we are running at 253 speed, we've got 6.3k attack, we're obviously gaining a value from the blessing, and we also have the faction guardians up and running already for this faction. No empowerment, obviously, because we're an epic champion, and we do have 20% more crit damage when we get that 4-star awakening as well. We're not running an attack banner, we're running an accuracy banner at the moment because I don't have any attack banners. That's an area of improvement. We do have a pretty good ring. We managed to get a double roll on attack percentage, although it's reasonably low roll. And we do also have a pretty good amulet here. But again, we could be looking to maneuver that away and get a better banner instead of having attack flat stat here. Now, obviously, the clan boss is low defense. We don't need savage, cruel, or anything. So we've got a crit damage set. We have got a cruel set, and we've got a perception set here running. And it is pretty, you know, the gear is pretty good here. We are talking, this is a high-end build, but there is room for growth. In terms of masteries, we are running Giant Slayer, and we are not running Steadfast. I want Ruella to be taking the stun in most scenarios because she is always covered by block debuffs. She can just be the stun target. We are taking Master Hexer to make sure that we get those debuffs up, but with Shemnath, that's a lot less of an issue. If you were running a different debuffer, you would want to run probably Master Hexer here. You always want to run Methodical. That's 10% more damage from your A1. I know Cycle of Violence here won't really do anything, but when we take her outside of this content, if we use her anywhere else, it will do something because the build is really good. So in terms of Elva, the other Sylvan Watcher for this Clan Boss MythWatcher team, we are running less than ideal accessories. We don't have another 5-star crit damage right now, so I don't even want to level this up any higher because it's pretty poor. We are running an accuracy banner because of the speed requirements, but again, she doesn't need accuracy. Attack would be where I'd want here. Once I get some more attack banners, we'll be able to pump more damage into this. We are running an attack ring with a single roll attack percentage. It's not the worst ring in the world, but again, it's not ideal. We did pick up this today in the clan shop, but it is not rolled attack percentage. It could be that I swapped to this to get some counterattack opportunities in rather than just a standard one with one roll here. But she is running at 294 speed, and we've got her at 70% crit rate, 193% crit damage, and 3.1k attack. She does have a relatively low base attack, so scaling this attack is going to be difficult. Don't have any faction guardians yet. We don't have any empowerment. We don't have any blessings. Obviously, putting something like a brimstone on this champion makes sense, although you will see, unless it's 6 out of 6 brimstone, it's going to be difficult to sustain the brimstone over a long period of time because of the way that Shemnath works in this team. We do have her in toxic gear. Now, this is some of my best toxic gear. This is what Ares was wearing in my last clan boss team. We have a double roll there. We have true triple rolls. We have an attack percentage with a single roll speed, not the craziest. The gloves are pretty average, and the boots are pretty average as well. But the weapon and the shield is pretty high end. But there's flexibility here. Obviously, you don't have to run Toxic on her if you don't want. You could choose to run it on Seeker instead. You only need one in this team though. But I've chosen her because I want to make sure I can maximize the damage from my Seeker and my Ruella. In terms of masteries here, I've gone down for Law of Steel again, just to maximize that speed set. We've gone for War Master, makes sense. If you weren't running Shemnath as a DPS, then obviously you need to make sure you either run another magic DPS or you don't run the Steadfast mastery here because you'd rather have Elva Autumnborn take the stun because you don't want Seeker to take that stun because he's not protected. So as long as you've got either another magic champion or you don't have Steadfast, you should be fine with this mastery set. The other super fast champion we've got in this team is Demitha. Now, Demitha is in kind of weird set. Surprisingly, she isn't in triple speed considering she is the fastest champion for this team. We do have her in double revenge to try and maximize her damage output a little bit. We've got a pretty crazy amulet here, even though she doesn't need accuracy. It's a pretty nutty amulet. And we've got a double roll attack percentage here. Long term, we'll probably look to get a better banner, but we have got a triple roll banner that actually only took one 6-star speed glyph, believe it or not. That was some luck on stream that we had. So, you know, long term, potentially we can get a revenge banner here, but I think that's very hard to beat. We do have pretty much triple roll gear around the bag. This is some of my fastest speed gear that isn't speed gear. You know, we have a 23 here, we have a 22, we have a single roll there. The boots are basically anything with a bit of damage. And then we've got a double roll. So she is running at 327 speed, 3.3k attack. Again, really low attack, so it's difficult to scale, but we do have Faction Guardians here. I have put the mastery on her. We're going to have a look at the mastery set in a minute because we didn't need the extra crit rate. She's running at 82% crit rate. It's a fast build, so you'll find it's difficult to get closer to that 70% because sometimes you'll have crit rate gloves that just have the speed roll, and 164% crit damage. Masteries wise, we have gone the attack blade discipline mastery because we don't need the 5% crit rate. Again, we've gone steadfast. I don't really want her taking the stun. Not that it really matters because she is protected with Elva, but it just makes sense that she isn't ever at risk. Any champion that has this, the clan boss will not target. We've gone down for Laura Steel to try and maximize the 1-speed set we've got. And again, we're taking Cycle of Revenge because there's nothing else worth taking. Then we also have Seeker. Now, Seeker is 5-star ascended. I'm quite lucky there, and I've got him in Cruelty, so we'll be able to get up to 15% defense reduction on the boss. We're waiting for that kind of 6-star where he gets to 7 speed. It is a lot of tier 3 shards. I do actually have enough tier 3 essence for him when I get him in the shop next, so that'll be interesting. He is running with a single piece of revenge, which is worth probably the sacrifice of 7% crit damage, but long term I'd probably want to upgrade that to something a little bit better when I get better revenge. And we have him again in broken sets. He's got one single set of crit damage, and then it's just picking stats here. We're just looking for really high damage in pieces, triple roll crit damage, crit rate. These are pieces. We did get lucky with the roll, so we'll be able to rebuild him eventually when we fully ascend this piece. Decent gear. I wouldn't say any of these pieces, unless we look at the top row, are absolutely insane pieces of gear. We've got Seeker running at 5.253 attack. Obviously, he's fully blessed for the stats, so he's going to get 20% crit damage and 400 attack here. 323% crit damage and 189 speed at 70% crit rate. His damage output is very high. This is a very high-end build, but it will be quite fun to see his damage. In terms of masteries, again, we're running down the War Master tree. He does need to have Steadfast. You never want Seeker taking a stun, so Steadfast is placed on there to make sure he doesn't get stunned. And then I've got Laura Steel. Now, obviously, if you were running Seeker in Toxic instead of Elva, you would look to take Master Hexer and Sniper to improve your output. If you weren't running Shemnath, then obviously that's even more important because you want those poisons to stay on as long as possible. We then just take Cycle of Violence. If we use him elsewhere, he's going to hit really hard. And now for the main champion of this team, the one that I'm most surprised at, we have got Shemnath here. He is not blessed yet. Neither is Elva, so there's a lot of growth here in this build. We are using a reaction ring purely because it is one of my most bonkers rings on this account. It is 29%. It's a quad roll. It is insane. Obviously, if I had a Night Revenant's champion that I was using in the arena, I'd have to sacrifice it a little bit because it's too good to give up. But in this instance, we're just going mad. We're trying to maximize the damage. We also have a triple attack crit damage amulet. It doesn't get much better than this unless it quad rolls. It's really strong. And we have that, I would say, an average banner. It's actually accuracy here because we obviously need accuracy to land the effects of extended debuffs. So we still need a little bit of accuracy in this build. So we've gone for this. Long term, hopefully we can get a bit of a legendary or an epic with some attack percentage rolls as well. But the build we've got here, we are again in broken pieces. We have 1 cruel, 1 speed. The cruel will help increase War Master, but it's not that major. We have got 7,000 attack, 279% crit damage at 209 speed with 73% crit rate, and probably a bit too much accuracy here. We only need around about 240 accuracy, but we got 272. Now remember, when there's 10 debuffs up, we're going to get 100% more crit damage. So this is effectively 379% crit damage. It is a crazy build considering we have no empowerment, we have no blessings yet. So blessings are going to push this up to 290. If we get full empowerment, you could put this up to like 9,000 attack probably. It would be absolutely insane. When we get more awakening, I'll be able to hopefully get an extra chunk of attack as well from the artifacts. So Shemnath will be a fun build to sort of get going once I actually get all the different maxed out, getting blessed up. In terms of masteries here, we have gone pinpoint accuracy. We've gone down for the Law of Steel. And again, we are going Giant Slayer because it's a 2, 3, and a 2 hit. So on average, Giant Slayer will pay off more damage than War Master. The rule of thumb, if you hit 2 times, then it's even. If you hit 3 times, it's better to go Giant Slayer. Let's have a look at the setup here to make sure that we have got everything in order. So Elva, you want to just turn off the revive. She shouldn't use it anyway, but I just like to make sure that the AI is set correctly. We want to prioritize the A2, but we're going to open with the A1. Ruella needs to prioritize this A3. We always want this to be the one she does first, but she's going to open with her A2 just because we need to delay this and we might as well get the debuffs out there sooner. She prioritizes A2 and then A3, but there are no delays with Demitha. Seeker, standard, no delays, no priority. He'll always do the A2 here, regardless when it's up. And then Shemnath, we are going to open with the A1, but prioritize the A2. That is to ensure that the increased attack is extended at the right period. And it is full auto from the start. This is actually the best affinity to test it on because Ruella is even, but Shemnath and Seeker are going to be strong affinity. It takes around about sort of 5 turns before it falls into tune. So we're just going to jump to that next bit now, and we're going to see what the numbers are truly like. We are back at around about turn 11 here. You can see we now have 10 debuffs up on the target. We actually had 1 resist early on the extension, so it took us a little bit of a while to get the toxic sets up and running, but we only have 1 toxic set here. So these buffs now will stay up all the time so long as she doesn't resist or 3% that extension. You can see the speed debuff doesn't really matter here because we're going to get cleansed by the Elva before they actually take a turn, so we can support a little bit of decreased speed for the first few turns. Now, an interesting thing about the way that Elva Autumnborn works. Whenever Elva takes an A1, she places a continuous heal on the ally with the lowest HP. And if she does the passive, at the end of her turn, she'll place a veil on a target. Now, the problem with this that I originally didn't understand, when it's a neutral setting like it is now, nobody in this team is low HP. They're all 100% HP. I assumed it would pick the ally with the lowest maximum HP, which is not true. It will prioritize the leader. That's why you see that we've got continuous heals on Elva, like 3 of them here. We've also got Veil. There is a clan boss team. If you choose to run without the aura, the speeds go up, but you can put Turvold in the lead and he will permanently have 10 buffs. And it is some obscene damage. I'm sure there is a Kraken out there who could probably build a +4 Turvold with absolutely bonkers amounts of damage. And Elva will constantly keep buffing. He will give the Veil buff and the continuous heals to the leader of the team if everyone is neutral HP, which in a block damage setting we are. The other champion this could be quite interesting for is Holzring. Holzring will do 30% more critical damage when he has Veil on himself. He'll always have Veil on himself because of this passive. It's really strong. So that's just a little note on how Elva works. So we are at turn 11, 26 million. Let's just take a look at some of the damage numbers we are going to see from this team here. We're going to have Seeker doing 130 to 122,000 on his A1. The A1 there from Shemnath is 100,000 per hit. And then Shemnath will always extend. So you can see the beauty of this team here. She's going to extend the buffs here. And we're going to get, what is that, 112,000 triple hit. So it's like a 300k A3, a 300k A2, a 200k A1. It's a very high damage build. There you go, 188,000 on the ignore 30% defense. But because of the extend self buffs and the extend that we have from Demitha, we are basically running so many buffs in this team. It is absolutely disgusting to see. It is really strong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this run all the way through to the end. And I'm going to come back at the end and we're going to look at the damage numbers. And we're going to look at some of the different variations you can run in this team, because MythWatchers is more than just a 5-man team. It is a framework that you can use to build various different champions into this 5th slot to have a lot of fun with. Just coming to the end of the run now. It is the last turn. We're just shy of 150 million. I think we're going to be just under 149. How did the team do here? So we have got Elva Autumnborn just popping up with 21.4 million. Ruella bringing 37 million here on neutral affinity. We've also got Demitha on 10 million. Obviously, she only attacks once, but even getting 10 million out of a single attack is pretty impressive. Seeker brings 30 million. And then we have Shemnath on 50.5 million. Now, there's a lot of room for growth here. We don't have any Brimstones. We don't have any Phantom Touches on Shemnath. We are still only 3-star on Ruella. When we get to 5-star and 6-star, these become more regular and more and significantly a lot more damage. A 6-star Phantom Touch is equivalent to around about 5 to 6 more million damage on a 3-1. The thing to note about this team, because you're running 3-1, you're getting more opportunities to get Phantom Touch out. You're getting more opportunities to get these War Master procs out. It really adds up over time. If we get to a 6-star Seeker, we can get another 5% defense off. That will improve everyone's War Master damage. If we can get a 6-star Demitha Aura, these things have a lot of room for growth. Now, this isn't the world record unkillable team. I think that still sits comfortably with the Mythbuster team. But this is a great, cool, new addition to our different options that we can run. Shemnath can be anyone you want in this position. It can probably do a lot more damage with a lot of different flexibility. But that is the MythWatchers potential here on 150 million with good to high-end gear. But like I mentioned, there is variations you can run of this team. I run Skrank for my Nightmare variation so that I can keep the speeds lower on my Ultra Nightmare team. And you can run him at around about 207 speed on Nightmare. And he has this special passive, a bit like Ninja, where he will increase his critical damage and attack percentage. This is multiplicative by 25% every time a HP burn debuff triggers on an enemy. So you can basically by about turn 5, you'll be fully stacked with this ability. He gives himself a little bit of a turn meter boost, so that helps with certain different difficulties around nightmare speeds and different things. He also gives himself increased attack if the target is under a burn debuff. So the good thing with this is you can get around that middle turn of the 3-1 ratio where you don't have increased attack, and he hits pretty hard. This was a run that I did on Nightmare with Skrank. You can see the team was still being built at the time. Elva wasn't really fully maxed out, but Skrank pumped out 56.5 million damage on his build here. We did about 157 million on Nightmare. And that was in this particular build here. He is at around about 274% crit damage, 6.6k attack. Again, no blessing, no phantom touch. There's a lot more damage potential to be had here in this particular build. We are looking at pretty good gear again, triple roll speed. This is probably a bit higher end build than other builds we've got. You could also run a rare champion. Obviously, we need to run a rare for the advanced quest, and that I ran on Nightmare here with Judge. Is a great champion on his A1. He has like a Shazar style ability where he will increase the damage that every debuff on the target has by 10% up to 100%. He also brings passive debuffs on his abilities, and you can run him in Toxic alongside another champion here to really maximize the poison debuff bar so you can get actual high-end damage out of his A1. And he pumped out 44.7 million damage on this team. That's on Nightmare. You could run that on Ultra Nightmare if you wanted to be able to have a team that did that advanced quest. There is lots of flexibility with this framework to have different champions in different positions that do different things. The one in particular that I think is potentially record-breaking is this particular build here. Now we have to increase everyone's speeds up because we can't put Elva in the aura position. But if you can put Turvold in the aura position, with Elva, he basically has 10 buffs up all the time. This run we did here was very suboptimal. I was still building the champions out. We didn't really maximize the decreased defense and weaken from Ruella because she was getting different debuffs out at different periods of time. And also, Turvold was using his extra turn, so he was consuming buffs he didn't need to consume because of the way the buff extension was working. I think if you had a high-end, fully blessed +4 Turvold, this could easily breach 200 million by quite a margin because of the amount of buffs that you can have Turvold running with. It's a really fun team to do. I will pin that tune in the comments below if anyone wants to try and reproduce it. The final champion I want to talk about is the only champion that I have been able to discover that can run Relentless Artifact Set in this team and still remain in tune. Most of the time with a block damage, increased speed type of team, you can't run Relentless because you outrun the increased speed buff and it breaks the tune. But there is one champion in the Barbarian faction, I don't have him, Elder Skarg. Whenever he crits on the A1, he places increased speed. So if he extra turns, he will always have increased speed up. And Elder Skarg has the third hardest hitting ability in the game with this Hunt the Marked if all of his attacks land. Now obviously we can ensure 3 debuffs are out between Ruella and a Toxic Gear, which means we're going to get a 6 hit boosted by 30% crit damage buffs, and he will place HP burn as well with a very high base attack. You put Phantom Touch on this dude, he is going to do a lot of damage. But you can run him in Relentless, which means you're going to be able to get more A2s out. If I had Elder Skarg, he would be potentially replacing Shemnath in my team, but I don't have him to try. So if you have him, please give him a go. Let me know how you get on with him. But he is the only one. He can run at exactly the same speeds. You just put Relentless on him instead, and he will not break the speed tune. You disable the A3. You don't care about the A3. You just A1 and A2 all the time. So there you go, guys. That is a long video, but I'm super excited about this Clan Boss team. I think it has a lot more potential than my previous teams. I'm pretty sure when I get optimal blessings, when I get optimal artifact ascension and we start working through it over the next 6 months, I'll be able to get this team above 200 million. It's not going to be the world record team because Cardiel is just so dominant in that team, but it is still a very fun, very cool team to build with a lot more flexibility, and you can have a lot more fun with different champions you pull if you want to try them in Clan Boss. If this is the first video you watched of the channel and you have enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. That helps me keep an eye on sort of the video content that I do to make sure that it's hitting the mark and everyone is enjoying the content. If you want to see more videos from this channel, please consider giving the subscribe button a hit and hit that bell notification. Any video that we release will go straight into your feed. And I of course stream now on this YouTube channel on Monday and Thursday nights, where we do different things like Hydra, we test different builds, we discover new Clan Boss teams that we can build and various different things. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.